I think EMS at the end of the day is probably the most underappreciated of the first responders. These guys show up every day to someone's worst day. Again, obviously I've shown how much respect I have for law enforcement and how much they do every day. But they could easily just show up to something and it's kind of nothing, EMS, generally speaking, if they're called out, 911 has been called, and no one dials 911, flippantly. So these guys are showing up to car crashes with kids in them, car crashes with that, just an innocent family, was just going to the beach today and didn't make it because now they're on a head-on collision. Someone's dad had a heart attack and the whole family's there crying, hoping that dad makes it, and they don't save them all, and they can't save them all, And I can just only imagine the things those guys see and deal with, and really to me kind of lines up more with PTSD and performance anxiety, thinking I didn't save the last guy, can I save the next guy? Is it me? Just so the more I look into it and the more stories of theirs I hear, it's just the EMS community is, I don't know, I get real passionate about that particular community.
All right, so we have our guest Brent Tucker on today from First Responder Coffee Company. How are you doing today?
So far, so good.
Awesome. So I did not have a chance to meet you in person, but Patrick Adams and then Josh Best were out with Hooten Young or Hooten. I always get this wrong. Norm Hooten and Tim Young.
Right.
Their brand and their names get too mixed up in my mind. But out in Georgia, and you were out there. How do you know those guys? What was that connection that brought you out there?
A lot of people think it's from Norm Hooten because we were both at the unit together. But actually, it's through Tim Young.
Okay.
Tim Young lives in Central Florida, just a couple towns over from me, and we have mutual friends. So I actually know Tim Young, and ironically enough, even though me and Norm were both in the Delta Force together, but at different times, it was Tim Young who introduced me to Hoot.
Very cool. Yeah, it's a small world.
Right. It is a small world.
Did you know Norm at all in the back or from your past, or was this just through Tim?
Yeah, he was a Block Hawk Down guy, so he'd have been there, before I was. So our careers didn't overlap, but I for sure knew who he was.
Right.
He didn't know who I was, but he should have.
Well, I mean, if we ask him, I don't know if we'll have the same answer.
Yeah, I don't know. I was a big deal. I don't know why he hadn't have heard of me, but he does now.
That's funny. So, First Responder Coffee Company. I want to get the full story of the company, but before that, I want to take it back to your background, how you ended up having a passion for serving first responders in the way that you do with First Responder Coffee. So, where did your career start? How did you end up in military law enforcement?
Yeah, so I put in 20 years in service. Half of that as a Green Beret, the other half of the Delta Force. And when I got out, I really just kind of wanted to decompress and not jump into another job.
Sure.
And I kept on having friends, kind of call me or reach out to me and say, "Hey, we're teaching this SWAT team. Would you come out and help us?" So I had several friends that were teaching SWAT teams across the country at the time. And so I would go help them. And just, so that's where the law enforcement interaction began. And it really started to show real quick. They have a lack of funding. Even SWAT teams have a lack of funding, which surprised me. Don't get me wrong. I don't expect them to be mini Delta Force teams and
Sure.
have an unlimited budget. I went in with a complete, what I thought was realistic understanding of their capabilities and their budget. And it was just completely underwhelming. And then when you get close, to that community, now I'm one step closer to the patrolman community, who are the cops showing up to these school shootings and these
Right.
active shooters. And you find out they have almost no training when it comes to this, and they truly have zero budget. So just entering into that world got me closer to law enforcement and the people who actually show up, the true first responders.
Hmm.
And it hurt my heart, to be honest with you, to see how, you know, how they're treated, how they could have a bad day or they could be put in a real tough situation and then have it recorded for the world to see.
Right.
No other job, what other job has that sort of pressure? I worked at the highest of levels, and no one was recording me and then blasting out on the news if I ever had a bad day. So that really started like driving my passion to support this community.
Yeah, the pressure they're under is crazy, and then the expectation to say you have this much time to train. Here's, like you said, here's your budget, super underfunded. Good luck, don't mess up.
Exactly. The cards are absolutely stacked against them, and the biggest irony of it is their biggest critics, in my opinion, if they were put in that same situation, would have made the same decision or a worse decision. Yet They have no problems, throwing rocks at the guys who are actually on the ground protecting communities every day. So I have an issue with that.
Do you think there was a time where that wasn't the case? That's something I've always wondered, because like the way politics have swung have created this culture, like the whole defund the police thing, and everything is anti-gun, anti-law enforcement, anti-safety.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that there was a point in time that wasn't the case. I know this is probably a whole other podcast, but that the 24-hour news cycle and social media has really given a voice to people who normally wouldn't have a voice, and that sounds like a good thing.
Right.
And there are definitely areas where that is a really good thing, but not in all cases. So now you have someone who, I'm generalizing, but you have a whole group of people who sit around all day, don't have anything better to do, and they will just hound people on social media and stir the pot when you didn't really have that avenue before. So yeah, I think it's changed because of that.
It's kind of amazing what people will say online versus say to someone's face.
Oh, absolutely.
Because those conversations just go a completely different direction in person.
No, but 100%.
Okay, so your exposure to law enforcement, was that primarily in a police department? Because I believe you are in law enforcement now, or am I getting that wrong?
No, I'm not. I'm not currently in law enforcement. I'm just. I actively still train them.
Okay, that's it.
I'm a part of a nonprofit called Blue Force Strategies, and we go out and we raise money to train cops for free. That's one of the things I do. Actually, that's really one of the kind of catalysts to make me start this, because we have that nonprofit. I don't really like asking people for money. It's not how I'm wired. And people will try to make me feel better about it. Like, hey, they're rich people. They have to give money. They're going to give money to someone. And that may be true, but it doesn't make me feel better. So I basically created this idea, First Responders Coffee Company, to raise my own money for our own causes. So that's my active tie into the law enforcement community, which I try to do less, because I really think if I concentrate more on this, we can do bigger things through this. Sure. Coffee is such a huge medium. So I'm trying to train less and focus on growing this more, because I honestly think I can do more good with this. Although training is a lot. It's a lot more fun going out there and hanging out with the guys and training than it is going to shows and, no offense, doing interviews and getting the word out. But I think this is where I need to be and where I can do the most good.
Is that training company? Is that something I still have? And is there a team that's doing that, or is that just a project you're working on?
It's a project me and solely working on. It's a nonprofit, so it's not necessarily a what I would consider a training company. So, and I'm still on the board of it, but I'm a non-paid board member.
Okay.
That's once I started getting into the nonprofit world, it's a little disheartening to see there's a lot of people making a very good living in the nonprofit world, and
Right.
that doesn't
makes you start to question what nonprofit means.
it sure does, and it didn't really sit well with us. So our almost all of our board members are unpaid positions, and the few paid positions are are very low considering who's sitting in that position.
Sure. So why coffee? How did that start? Was that something you had a passion for before, or was this?
Yeah, just purely looking at it from a business model. I had owned a small business before. We made custom flags. They looked like old antique wooden flags, and we had laser engravers and 3D printers that put custom logos on them. And it was a really cool project and a really cool small business. Solely speaking from a business aspect, it was a horrible business model.
Okay.
You couldn't scale up. Everything was very custom. It took a lot of time. It just, the basic when you added up all your time and the price of it, your price per hour just wasn't there. But I'll tell you, it was really cool doing woodworking
Right.
for a living. So it wasn't that big of a deal. But it taught me a lot about business, and it taught me a lot about the logistics of business, payroll, taxes, and when it comes to anything else, it taught me what I didn't want to do as well, which is just as easily just as an important lesson. So when this came out, and we're like, hey, let's raise our own money. Those hard lessons learned kind of stuck with me. And I'm like, well, we're not going to do something custom, and we're not going to do something that we can't scale up. If we want to do this, if we want to do a whole lot of good in the world, it has to be something that we can produce, scale up, and easily ship, easily make, and it has to have a wide range of a customer base. Well, coffee fits all that. But that's not the only reason that I picked coffee. We were also, sitting there just thinking of different ways. And of course, Black Rifle, comes to mind, and how big they are. And it just got me thinking, they're doing great. And a lot of people ask me, hey, why didn't you do like a military themed coffee? You're from the Delta Force. There's no reason to go head to head with Black Rifle. They have the military, market, the gun bro market on lockdown. But when it came to the people we were training, first responders, there's really no real player in that space. So
that's something I was thinking about when I was looking at the brand, and I was like, like you said, there's brands like Black Rifle, and there's so many out there that are kind of doing that same thing, but they all seem to be geared towards military rather than law enforcement. And I don't think I've seen one that's focusing on what you're doing.
Yeah, and inevitably someone will say, hey, don't you think that's a crowded market? Think that's a good idea to get in coffee? Everyone's doing coffee. And then I usually just turn right back and say, we'll then name a first responder or a police or a firefighter coffee. And then they sit there and like, oh, well, I can't. I say, well, it must not be as a crowded market as you thought it was. And it kind of makes them realize, oh, you're right. Now that I'm in this market, I could name 5 or 6 different brands, off the top of my head of people in this space. Mm-hmm. But we intend to go as big as we can. So I don't think anyone's occupied that space at the level it should be occupied at. There's millions of first responders throughout the country, on top of millions of retired first responders, the first responders, spouses, first responders, family. It gets into the millions. It's a massive market. And if this market, I really think, realized who they are and what they're capable of if they get together and support each other, we really could raise a significant amount of money to put back into first responder causes. It's probably not the best sales pitch, but it's not about the coffee.
Right.
It's about the coffee is the vehicle to do good, and I just don't know of another product, to be honest with you, that I think reaches as many people, that as many people are connected with, and at a price point people are willing to pay to do, these good things. And of course, I'd be. It sounds like I don't care about the coffee. We have great coffee. It's small
I was
batch.
going to say, as long as the coffee's good, right?
That's right. Yeah. It's small batch roast. It's 100% Arabica coffee. It's from Brazil. Everyone always comes back up to us and like, hey, that's really good coffee. And deep down, every now and again, I wouldn't say I'm offended by it, but I'm like, well, why are you surprised it's good coffee? What do you think? We're just going to put, bad coffee in a bag and hope for the best. So I believe the brand and the cause will get me my first customer, but it'll take good coffee to get a repeat customer.
Right.
And to do the good things we want to do, we have to have repeat customers. So we're super proud of the coffee, and we're super proud of what we stand for and what we're doing.
It's interesting in these spaces, or in like whiskey or cigars and that whole thing.
Yeah.
You can have a super cool story behind a brand, and if the product's just not good, you're just like, that was a good, like you said, a good first purchase.
Right. Hey, and I've seen it the other way. I've seen people, because that's right, that the branding is so good and they don't really like the product, but they just love the branding so much they'll keep buying it. So obviously, I think when you want to occupy this type of space and the level that we want to occupy it is, you have to have both.
Sure. Do you, for the nonprofit side of this, for the giving side of it, do you have a program you have set up for how you donate the proceeds?
Oh, yeah. So so we have the different bags. We have a firefighter bag, a police bag, a sheriff bag, and an EMS bag. Really covers the basis of first responders.
Okay.
And depending on which bag you buy, 20% of the retail profits go to that organization.
Very
so
cool.
Let's just talk law enforcement, that vertical. We have two things that we do for charity. We will always have a special project. And right now the special project is Deputy Altman. He lost his house during the hurricane. And of course, the irony of it is, as a first responder, he was on call out saving other people from the hurricane the whole time as he's losing his own house during the hurricane. Right. He's got a wife, 9 kids, and 3 dogs, and they're slowly packing up the house and going into, an evacuation plan while dad's out serving the community. The whole thing just, breaks my heart. He's having a battle with insurance right now. Insurance is saying they're not going to claim it, or not going to approve his claim. And he's pretty confident he'll win that battle. But even if he does, it's going to cost him probably tens of thousands of dollars to stay somewhere until that happens. Get back. It's just a bad situation. So it's our company's commitment that we've made to ourselves that before Christmas time, we're going to cut that family a $10,000 check. So when we went to SWAT Roundup recently. We went to a Canines United law enforcement dog competition. When we go to those shows, proceeds from those shows go to our special projects fund. We also have a grand opening that'll be this Friday. We'll have an auction, and all those proceeds, and we'll keep going until we raise that $10,000. And as soon as we cut that family a check for $10,000, we're going to find another special project that we think $10,000 can positively affect a family. So that's half of it. The other half for law enforcement, and most of those funds are raised again through events, shows, and charitable events that we have.
Sure.
When it comes to the bag sales specifically themselves and 20% of the retail profits, we do what's called we call them the coffers, where we keep on filling up our charitable coffers. And we're going to start a grant program where if a law enforcement officer wants to go to training and his department says, no, you can't go, we don't have the funding, they can apply to our grant. and we'll step in and pay for that training for them. So that's what we're trying to do for on the law enforcement side, because I think, our three verticals for charity is training, equipment, and mental health. So for law enforcement, training to us is really where we want to focus the most. The other two we will absolutely cover down on.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got connected to a representative for Hook a Hero for mental health. That they're already in that space. So for them, if we run across those, we're just no reason to reinvent the wheel. They're already doing great work in that. We'll just help pay for and support them for anyone that goes through their program.
So
it's a lot. We have a lot going on, and we have big goals in that aspect. But again, it goes back to my prior conversation. If we get enough support that we think we should have, as long as we get the message out, we'll be able to do all that and more.
How can people, so they can support you guys and they can support the projects you're doing by buying the coffee?
Yes.
Right?
So, and we make we don't hide our charitable causes and efforts and intentions right on the website, frccoffee.com. At the third page down is the Altman family and the special project. There's a donate button. You can donate right to that. The donations don't come to the coffee company. We have a whole nonprofit, set aside to ensure that all the money gets funneled right to the nonprofit. So donations for the Altman family go right to that. Otherwise, everything's getting raised through coffee sales, and not just coffee sales. Our commitment is every bag, every T-shirt, every hat. If it leaves our store, it's getting tagged with a charitable cause.
Is the only way for people to purchase online, or do you have facings in stores, or how does that work right now?
No. So we're a new business, a new company. We just launched November 15th, which was yesterday for whenever this airs. And the business plan has us doing all online retail sales initially. But like any plan, nothing survives first contact.
Right.
So we still have that and going strong. We have about a dozen social media influencers that are first responders pushing out the message. So that's one avenue we have at sales. The other one is we have an associations program, and we partner with associations, and we said, hey, if we want to raise money, why? And put it back to a good cause. Well, there's already associations doing that, and they know the needs of their community better than anyone else. That's probably the whole reason they're an association. So we partner with associations. We'll just take Canines United, for instance, a great foundation that raises money for law enforcement canine handlers. Those guys need special leashes, special equipment, sensors that let them know when the inside of their car is getting too hot. Almost half of the dog fatalities this year happen from heat exhaustion. So they're doing some great things. So we partnered with them, and they send out an email to all their members, and they say, hey, we've partnered with FRCC. Go to their website, use Canines United as a promo code at checkout. And when you do, 100% of the retail profits get donated back to our organization. So when their members go to our website, they pay retail price, but when they put in that promo code, I can track it, and I give a large donation of that sale back to Canines United. So with that program alone, we'll be raising thousands of dollars for foundations. And we have, I'll throw out a bunch of foundations that you may or may not know about, but ODMP, Officer Down Memorial Page, they're a huge foundation that helps fallen law enforcement officers and their families. NTOA, which is a National Tactical Officer Association, if you're in law enforcement, you know who NTOA is. The LAPD Association, everyone knows who LAPD is.
Yep.
So we have the association program is going well, and we're going to raise a lot of money for associations. That's the second vertical of business for us. And the last one is retail stores. We are getting into gun shops, and we are getting into training facilities. We're in about 5 or 6 large training facilities throughout America, and that list grows literally every day. So we are getting into retail stores, and I think our plan this year is to be into 500 gun stores before the end of 2023. So we have some audacious plans, but everyone that hears our mission, sees our product, tastes our coffee, I hate to say it, I'm waiting for it to start getting tough. But
Sure.
Everyone that hears the message is on board. We just need to figure out ways for more people to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was at a gun store, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, and it wasn't Black Rifles coffee. I forgot whose it was. It was another one of those that are military specific.
Yeah.
But they were talking about how their store's mission is to have a place for law enforcement to train. And I was like, there's so many opportunities here. Not saying that the military side should be neglected, because that absolutely needs to be taken care of. But like what you said, the first responder, police officer, fire, EMS.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's be candid about that conversation. I mean, this isn't Vietnam, I feel like the nation has been really, really good to our military for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think as Americans in general, whenever something's done wrong to any individual or group of people, we carry that on our back for a long time as a nation.
Right.
We have solved the appreciation for a military problem. Am I saying, hey, it's solved, we shouldn't, we don't have to appreciate our military anymore? That's not what I'm saying. But, I served, of the time I was in the military, for almost 2 decades, I was at war. I mean, that is unheard of, for the rest, from the rest of our history.
Right.
And never did I come home and feel like I wasn't appreciated. Could I have at times in my career, or earlier on, not later on, could I have had better equipment? Could I have had more training? Yeah. Did I have what I needed to do my job? I did. So I think it's a drastic difference between our military and our law enforcement. There is a massive gap between the two. And at the end of the day, I said this to someone at SWAT Roundup just the other day. They were like, well, why law enforcement? Why didn't you could have been a government contractor for big money and done anything you wanted to do with your resume.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of summed up when I said, hey, when my family needs it, when my family needs protection, the Delta Force isn't coming to my home in helicopters and protecting my family. Law enforcement is who we're going to call, and that's who's going to come to my home. Especially if I'm not home, that's who's coming to protect my family. If my family if my wife and kids get into a car accident tomorrow on the way to practice, Delta Force medics aren't coming to save my family and take them to a hospital. EMS is who are going to save my family. So I just think, just because, there's a few videos out there floating around of some cops making some tough decisions, somehow that's neglected our I shouldn't even say neglected. That's cause for us not to fully understand and appreciate what this sect of community does for us. I don't buy it, and I won't. So
the narrative, even to kids, is shocking with how we talk about law enforcement. We were watching, I can't remember the name of the show, but the setting was in a school. They're trying to get this 5th grader to behave in class, and someone's like, let's play good cop, bad cop with this kid. And then the other teacher involved said, you mean bad cop, because there are no good cops. And then this is a show like a family.
Yeah. And
it's like,
And it goes right back to what I said. And you know who she's going to call when she hears someone prying on her window in the middle of the night.
Right.
She's going to call those bad cops that she'll say that in the classroom, but when she needs someone the most, she will call them and she will 100% expect them to show up and risk their lives on her behalf.
Yep.
It's
yeah,
insane.
the narrative needs to change. But yeah, it's funny. People will say whatever they want, whatever's trending about law enforcement.
Yeah.
And then like, yeah, that's who they're going to call. That's
100%. And obviously we've seen exactly what the defund police movement has done. Crime in every major city has spiked up 20 and 30%. People are absolutely besides themselves with what's going on. And most of those people now have decided maybe that wasn't the best idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Turns out when you take people's resources away that are responsible for protecting your life, it doesn't end well.
you can't make it up. Like their two biggest points was, police need better training. We need better trained cops. And the same people saying that are also saying, let's defund the police. Well,
yeah.
You can't have both.
The alternative too was interesting. My wife was a social worker for the county, and she worked for comprehensive community services and then CPS. And so she'd have to go on house calls, just to these crazy situations. She's like a 5'6" blonde walking into situations that no one should walk in except armed law enforcement. Right. And then now the narrative turned, defund the police, send social workers.
Send a social worker. Oh, yeah, that's...
Why?
Yeah.
It's a worse decision. And then at the county level, they're also underfunded. So it's
it's funny. I forgot that they had mentioned that as a possibility or an answer. Yeah. Ask those social workers if they want to show up to those calls.
Absolutely not.
I don't think that answer was coming from social workers. So it's funny. Again, people who don't have to execute the things they're promoting have those answers. Obviously have those answers. So people who don't have to show up, to a guy who's resisting arrest and has a gun in his waistband that you're wrestling with, those same people who don't have to do that job will tell people how they should do that job. Well, yeah. The same people who aren't social workers are more than willing to tell social workers to show up to a family fight and a custody fight where knives have been, pulled out and people are at their highest emotional status, and have a social worker come in and solve that situation.
It's a crazy expectation.
It's a crazy expectation, to say the least.
You mentioned mental health earlier. Why do you think that's been... I don't think it's been neglected with military, but I think it's been relatively neglected with law enforcement. And even like now, to take it back to my wife's situation, she's a therapist for the National Guard for Wisconsin.
Okay.
She's done that for 8 months now. So it's pretty new. But even just that exposure is kind of proving like these units, National Guard units, just military as a whole, is, by however you define it, attempting to work with soldiers, find solutions for them. And there's a bunch of nonprofits out there that are working with them. But police specifically, and SWAT and fire, why is that not?
I don't know. It's another thing that just hasn't, I think, translated well from military to law enforcement, which is the mental health aspect. And if you really think about it, it's EMS that actually comes to mind the most when it comes to mental health for me. But we'll talk about that in a second. It goes back to these guys have their hardest days put on video. Well, usually when something like that happens, I'm not saying all the time, but if we rewind that and we find out, hey, sometimes you'll hear interviews like, man, that guy never acts like that. He's usually a really nice guy. He's pretty docile. That guy hit the suspect, just pushed his buttons. Well,
it's the same thing they say about a serial killer, though. Yeah, they're a pretty nice guy, but
Well, did the suspect push his buttons, or did he show up today, with bad mental preparation of just months and months and months of this job wearing him down,
Yep.
where he constantly, I mean, if you think about police officers, they're not every day, the people they interact with is usually not the best of our society. If they're dealing with them, they're dealing with them for a reason. So every day these guys have to work with people in our society that don't abide by the law, probably have no respect for police officers. And you think at some point he doesn't carry that home, to his wife and kids, and then now that's having an effect on his life.
Mm-hmm.
And it just wears someone down. And at some point he's going to show up to work and not have the best day at work.
Right.
And again, it'll be recorded for everyone to see. So mental health, really, to me, in law enforcement, I'm not saying that they don't have PTSD issues as well. They see horrible things, but to me, that's the mental health aspect that actually goes back into training and performing. Is you have to show up mentally prepared, and mentally ready every day. And that job, I go on a ride along almost every month, and I see what these guys deal with, and they always look at me and like, sorry, another boring night. We didn't get into a shootout tonight.
Right.
I don't expect, again, I don't expect them to get in these crazy shootouts and it to be like a target from the Delta Force every night. What amazes me every time is their patience with people and the people they deal with and how they're treated. It amazes me because I am not wired to do that job, yet they do it day in, day out. It's
the time under tension. I think that's probably how I'd phrase it.
Yeah.
To be able to perform that way is.
And now when you talk about PTSD, our EMS line, I hate to say it. I mean, we have an EMS line because they're part of first responders, but as I wanted to launch this business and make sure that we cover the bases, because every one of these first responder communities, firefighters, EMS, law enforcement, do amazing things every day. I think EMS at the end of the day is probably the most underappreciated of the first responders. These guys show up every day to someone's worst day.
Mm-hmm.
Again, obviously I've shown how much respect I have for law enforcement and how much they do every day, but they could easily just show up to something and it's kind of nothing,
Yep.
EMS, generally speaking, if they're called out, 911 has been called, and no one dials 911, flippantly. So these guys are showing up to car crashes with kids in them, car crashes with that, just an innocent family, was just going to the beach today and didn't make it because now they're on a head-on collision. Someone's dad had a heart attack and the whole family's there crying, hoping that dad makes it, and they don't save them all, and they can't save them all, And I can just only imagine the things those guys see and deal with. And really, to me, kind of lines up more with PTSD and performance anxiety, thinking, I didn't save the last guy, can I save the next guy? Is it me? Just so the more I look into it and the more stories of theirs I hear, it's just the EMS community is, I don't know, I get real passionate about that particular community.
I like how you phrase that, though. They show up every day to someone's worst day.
That's right.
That's
every day to someone's worst day. And every now and again, someone, because of the call volume and priority list, a cop may take a while to get there, depending on what it is. I've unfortunately had to call 911, for one of my babies that was choking. They were there in like 45 seconds. It was actually amazing. And so, when you call them, they're there. It's
right.
And I've talked to a few of them and, I had to learn about what their needs were. It's like, hey, what do you guys need? Like mental health, hits my radar, really quick, but what do you guys need? And some of the larger city ones are fairly well funded. And And then you find out it gets a little bit complicated. Some paramedics come from fire stations, some come from hospitals, some are privately owned. But you get wild answers from, oh, we have really nice stuff. We just see really bad stuff every day. To others are like, yeah, our ambulance is held together by duct tape. And so they have bad equipment issues and they have to deal with the things that they have to deal with. So we get a wide range of answers when it comes to EMS.
How do you think the general public, I guess, can be a better support? So there's programs like you have for first responder coffee, but outside of that, like, what do you think's missing, or what do you think can be done to either bring awareness or support?
I'll just say just that, awareness. It seems like a simple answer, and it seems like, well, what does that do when it comes to certain answers of awareness bug me, because I'm like, awareness, that's all you can think to do for someone,
right?
In this particular answer, or this particular question, awareness is the answer. And what's odd is people know this deep down, like, so it's not like awareness is teaching them something they need to learn. They know that paramedics do this every day. It's just one of those like subconscious things that happens. But when you bring it up and put it in their face, they're like, you don't have to sell it to them and explain to them what paramedics are doing every day. They know it. They just have to hear it and connect those dots and be like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Because everyone has, just like I do, everyone has a story in their family of an ambulance coming to save someone in their immediate family or friends, and they immediately jump to that incident. So it's not a hard sell, and it's not something you really have to educate someone on. They just have to hear it and
be reminded of it.
It needs to go to the forefront of their mind every now and again. And so, honestly, it goes back to, hey, we're telling that story, we're pushing that. Let's get behind first responder causes and businesses, and the more they grow, so will the story.
Yeah, so we'll do everything out that we can to get the word out about what you're doing, and then just the general, like, bring awareness to what's going on, specifically with law enforcement, EMS, fire. Your website, frccoffee.com. That's where people can find you.
frccoffee.com.
And then is there we can talk about this after, but I'd like to figure out a way that we can send people your direction, so you can track that, and we can hopefully get something going and bring you business, and then bring some funds to the projects you're working on.
Yeah, it'd be greatly appreciated. I can't thank you enough for having me on the podcast, and
thank you.
And I'm sure at the end of the day, I get these opportunities every now and again, and people just really want to talk about my Delta Force past. But obviously, what I'm passionate about right now is my next phase of life and helping first responders, and we'll see where that takes us.
Very cool. I'm excited about what you guys are doing and where you're going, and the good work you're doing.
Thank you, sir.
So awesome. Thank you.